Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here. So, as said, I work with in the impact investment field. I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. It's a new kind of investment strategy to pursue environmental and social benefit in addition to a financial return. And it's largely focused on funding what we now call social enterprise. So businesses who, through the products they offer or the way they produce and deliver their products and services, solve a specific environmental or social problem. And I think what Nick just said about the technological shifts that we're facing, I think that's just one driver of a massive institutional change that we're getting into. Another one is that we need to change. We've reached the carrying capacity of our planet, climate change, biodiversity loss, and so on. The technological part of that change is allowing us to change. There are ways to, free energy, clean energy is now a reality. There's a saying from a science fiction writer that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. But we know that from an economic and from an engineering perspective, these things are possible. And I think it's very difficult today to really understand what that means and what the shifts will be. And Nick mentioned the loss of jobs, and I would actually, coming from this social and environmental perspective, working with NGOs and with social entrepreneurs to drive this shift through creating prototypes, I would actually rejoice at the loss of jobs because that allows us to focus on the work that is really important. Because our current system does one thing, it's a massive misallocation of resources. We create significant externalities like pollution, exploitation, injustice, exclusion, and so on. And a lot of positive value doesn't get created. So care, education, all these kind of work that is really valuable to us as humans, healing the planet, conservation work, etc., is either not done at all or not valued in the way it should be. And I think this shift, on the one hand, driven by technology and technological possibility, like Nick said, by necessity, because we have to, and also increasingly, as we see these technological possibilities, by the desire to change, will drive us towards what I call the impact economy. There's other words for it, a new economic paradigm, which is essentially a different way of looking at value. And here is where I think SMEs, and this is my uplifting message, they're driving this change. It's small companies that are usually good at innovating because they don't have a legacy baggage of how things were done in the past. And here in particular, I think, and I work with social entrepreneurs across Central and Eastern Europe. I also did some work in Greece some time ago. I'd love to re-engage here, but it's a similar situation here. Countries that struggle because they are on the periphery, they're not Silicon Valley or London or Berlin. It's actually a bug that you can look at as a feature because in adversity breeds more creativity. There's a good reason why, for instance, the biggest mobile banking penetration is in Kenya and not in countries like in Austria or Sweden, where we have, I think, 2-point-something mobile phones per capita, not per adults, because they had to. They had to innovate, and that's why M-Pesa is the banking solution of choice in markets where, like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and so on. So I think the other thing is that in countries like Greece or in Central and Eastern Europe, and I include Austria, where I come from in this region, one thing that is a bug you can look at as a feature, talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And in particular in the startup, early stage financing space, whether it's access to capital, and that applies to all other SMEs as well, things are very concentrated because of the way we organize our allocation of resources through the financial markets and so on. And this is where non-governmental organizations come in driving this transition to an impact-driven economy. And I work with the World Wildlife Fund in Switzerland, and we look at projects, what they've been doing for years sometimes in delivering conservation, impact and resource efficiency. And we try to wrap a business model, a viable business model around this NGO project. And in some cases that is easy, in some cases that takes a long time. And I believe that non-governmental organizations whose core is to drive this mission, whether it's a social mission or an environmental mission, are really ideal trailblazers for this shift to a new kind of economic paradigm, because they are extremely and exclusively focused on their mission, and the business sustainability part of it comes second. And this is also, I think, the big challenge. Largely, even though there's been significant progress and growth in the social enterprise and impact investment scene in the 10 years that I've been engaged here, and I think we're close to a tipping point where it is almost inevitable that this movement becomes mainstream. So my mission is to make the term social entrepreneur and impact investor redundant, and not in 20 years, but maybe in 5 or 10 years, so that we only talk about entrepreneurs and impact investors and investors. And if you're not creating positive benefit for society and the environment while you generate a profit, you'll be out of business. And I think we're quickly moving towards a world like that. But the challenge is that those organizations, institutions that can drive this change, and these are either business angels, family offices, principal capital that can take their own decisions and act on a vision, or it is mandated agents, meaning, for instance, development banks, both domestic and international, as well as non-governmental organizations and philanthropic foundations, whose mission it is to drive this kind of change. They control only about less than 5% of global financial assets. And all the rest is controlled by institutions where the investment strategy is largely cover my ass, sorry. So I think it's those 5% of financial assets, philanthropists, business angel investors, impact funds that you see, and NGOs who need to drive this change by creating more and more success stories, so that the success stories become data, and then the institutions can act upon the data. And we see the first successes of that. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's about 6 weeks ago that Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager with over $6 trillion under management, sent in a letter to the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies and say, society demands that you demonstrate a positive contribution to society. And we as BlackRock will withdraw our support if you cannot demonstrate that you as a business, as the largest businesses in the world, can demonstrate that you have a positive impact on society and the environment. And the fact that he wrote this letter, I think, is a great progress. But the thing that I got really excited about, and it's a bit nerdy, is the demonstrable. Because one of the big challenges that we have is that quantifying impact, measuring it, and putting it on the same managerial and controlling level as profit, which is easy to measure, yeah? But how do you measure quality of life and the less quantifiable benefits to society or the environment? So I think what this will do is that we will learn how to better measure, and therefore also how to manage, and then the rest will be engineering, because as soon as we have the systems, then the resource allocation will move in a way that is more human, more just, and more logical. Thank you.